Somewhere in your house, there is a photo of you as a baby. You are smiling at someone. You have no idea who. You cannot remember the room, the smell, the sound of that voice. And yet you were there, fully conscious, fully alive. So where did it go? You assume memory works like a camera. Turn it on, and it records. But your brain didn't turn on that way. For the first few years of your life, it was building the camera, not using it. This gap has a name. Psychologists call it infantile amnesia. It is not a flaw. It is not damage. It is universal. Every human who has ever lived has lost the first 2 to 4 years of their own existence. Even people with extraordinary memories. Even people who remember phone numbers from decades ago. The earliest years are gone for everyone. Sigmund Freud noticed this over 100 years ago. He didn't understand why it happened. He guessed wrong about the cause. But he named the phenomenon, and the name stuck because the mystery stuck. Why would a healthy, functioning brain simply erase its own beginning? Here is where it gets strange. Babies do form memories. Researcher Carolyn Rovee-Collier proved this decades ago with a simple experiment. She tied a ribbon from an infant's ankle to a mobile hanging above the crib. The baby kicked. The mobile moved. Within minutes, babies as young as 2 or 3 months old learned the connection. Kick, movement, kick, movement. Weeks later, she brought the same babies back. She hung the same mobile, and the babies kicked immediately. No relearning, no hesitation. The memory had survived. So the problem isn't that babies can't remember. The problem is something else entirely. Something happens between infancy and adulthood that makes those early memories unreachable. Not deleted, unreachable. There's a difference, and it matters. Think about your brain in your first years of life. It was under construction at a scale that never happens again. Neurons were multiplying at a staggering rate. Connections were forming and dissolving by the millions every single day. One part of this construction site was the hippocampus, the structure responsible for stitching moments into long-term memories you can consciously recall. In infancy, the hippocampus is still raw, still growing new neurons at a breakneck pace, a process called neurogenesis. Researcher Paul Franklin ran studies on mice showing that when neurogenesis is high, old memories become harder to access. New neurons wiring into old circuits can effectively overwrite the paths back to them. Your brain, in other words, was rebuilding its own filing system while the files were still being written. Not losing the memories through simple decay, losing the roads that led back to them. There's a second piece to this puzzle, and it has nothing to do with biology. It has to do with language. Psychologist Patricia Bowers spent years studying how children encode memory, and her research points to something surprising. Before a child has language, especially the language of time, cause, and self, their memories exist more like fragments. A feeling, an image, a sound. What language gives you, once you develop it around age 3 or 4, is structure. A way to organize experience into something with a beginning, a middle, and an end. A story you can tell yourself later. Without that scaffolding, the earliest memories have nowhere to attach. They're not filed under a date, a place, a me. They're just floating. So why do most people's earliest memories cluster around 3.5 years old? Almost exactly, across cultures, across generations. Because that's roughly when the hippocampus stabilizes enough to hold long-term episodic memory, and it's roughly when language catches up enough to give those memories a shape you can hold on to. Two systems, biological and linguistic, finishing construction around the same time. Here's the twist that changes how you should think about this. Infantile amnesia isn't a bug your brain forgot to fix. Some researchers, including Nora Newcomb, argue it may actually be a feature. A brain that kept every raw, unstructured, pre-linguistic impression from its first years might be a brain cluttered with noise it can't use. Wiping the unusable draft may be exactly what allows a stable, searchable, self-aware memory system to be built on top of it. You didn't lose your first years. Your brain traded them for the ability to remember everything that came after. Now here is where it gets personal. Because this isn't just something that happened to you once, at the very start. It's still happening, in a smaller way, right now. Have you ever tried to describe the exact feeling of a moment and found the words weren't enough? Have you ever had a memory that felt vivid until you tried to explain it to someone and it fell apart the second you put it into sentences? That's the same tension your infant brain lived in constantly, feeling something fully but lacking taido batidi. That's